Section 16 of the Arabian Nights Entertainments, Volume 2, by Anonymous. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The history of Aboulhassen Ali Ebn Ecar and Schemselnihar, favourite of Caliph Haroon al-Rasheed, Part 4. After this introduction, the jeweller entered upon the matter and continued, "Prince, I shall have the honour to tell you that it is a long time since conformity of disposition and some business we have had together united Ebn Thayer and myself in strict friendship. I know you are acquainted with him, and that he has employed himself in obliging you to his utmost. I have learnt this from himself, for he keeps nothing secret from me, nor I from him. I went just now to his shop, and was surprised to find it shut. I addressed myself to one of his neighbours to ask the reason. He answered me that 2 days ago Ebn Thayer took leave of him and other neighbours, offering them his service at Bussorah, whither he is gone, said he, about an affair of great importance. Not being satisfied with this answer, my concern for his welfare determined me to come and ask if you knew anything particular concerning this, his sudden departure." At this discourse, which the jeweller accommodated to the subject, the better to compass his design, the Prince of Persia changed colour, and looked at the jeweller in a manner which convinced him how much he was disconcerted at the intelligence. "I am surprised at what you inform me," said he. "A greater misfortune could not befall me. Ah," he continued, with tears in his eyes, "if what you tell me be true, I am undone. Has Ebn Thayer, who was all my comfort, in whom I put all my confidence, left me? I cannot think of living after so cruel a blow." The jeweller needed no more to convince him fully of the Prince of Persia's violent passion, which Ebn Thayer had told him of. Mere friendship would not make him speak so. Nothing but love could produce such lively sensations. The Prince continued some moments absorbed in melancholy thoughts. At last he lifted up his head, and calling one of his servants, said, "Go to Ebn Thayer's house, and ask some of his domestics if he be gone to Bussorah. Run, and come back quickly with the answer." While the servant was gone, the jeweller endeavoured to entertain the Prince of Persia with indifferent subjects, but the Prince gave little heed to him. He was a prey to fatal grief. Sometimes he could not persuade himself that Ebn Thayer was gone, and at others he did not doubt of it, when he reflected upon the conversation he had had with him the last time he had seen him, and the abrupt manner in which he had left him. At last the Prince's servant returned, and reported that he had spoken with one of Ebn Thayer's servants, who assured him that he had been gone 2 days to Bussorah. "As I came from Ebn Thayer's house," added the servant, "a slave well dressed met me, and after she had asked me if I had the honour to belong to you, told me she wanted to speak with you, and begged at the same time that she might accompany me. She is in the outer room, and I believe has a letter to deliver to you from some person of consequence." The Prince commanded her to be immediately introduced, not doubting but it was Schemselnihar's confident slave, as indeed it was. The jeweller knew her, having seen her several times at Ebn Thayer's house. She could not have come at a better time to save the Prince from despair. She saluted him. The Prince of Persia returned the salute of Schemselnihar's confidant. The jeweller arose as soon as he saw her, and retired, to leave them at liberty to converse together. The confidant, after she had spoken some time with the Prince, took her leave and departed. She left him quite another person from what he was before. His eyes appeared brighter, and his countenance more gay, which satisfied the jeweller that the good slave came to tell him something favourable to his amour. The jeweller, having taken his place again near the Prince, said to him, smiling, "I see, Prince, you have business of importance at the Caliph's palace." The Prince of Persia, astonished and alarmed at these words, answered the jeweller, "What leads you to suppose that I have business at the Caliph's palace?" "I judge so," replied the jeweller, "by the slave who has just left you." "And to whom, think you, belongs this slave?" demanded the Prince. "To Schemselnihar, the Caliph's favourite," answered the jeweller. "I know," continued he, "both the slave and her mistress, who has several times done me the honour to come to my house and buy jewels. Besides, I know that Schemselnihar keeps nothing secret from this slave, and I have seen her pass backwards and forwards for several days along the streets, as I thought, very much troubled. I imagined that it was for some affair of consequence concerning her mistress." The jeweller's words greatly troubled the Prince of Persia. "He would not say so," said he to himself, "if he did not suspect, or rather were not acquainted with my secret." He remained silent for some time, not knowing what course to take. At last he began, and said to the jeweller, "You have told me things which make me believe that you know yet more than you have acquainted me with. It concerns my repose that I be perfectly informed. I conjure you, therefore, not to conceal anything from me." Then the jeweller, who desired nothing more, gave him a particular account of what had passed betwixt Ebn Thayer and himself. He informed him that he was apprised of his correspondence with Schemselnihar, and forgot not to tell him that Ebn Thayer, alarmed at the danger of being his confidant in the matter, had communicated to him his intention of retiring to Bussorah until the storm which he dreaded should be blown over. "This he has executed," added the jeweller, "and I am surprised how he could determine to abandon you in the condition he informed me you were in. As for me, Prince, I confess I am moved with compassion towards you, and am come to offer you my service. If you do me the favour to accept of it, I engage myself to be as faithful to you as Ebn Thayer. Besides, I promise to be more resolute. I am ready to sacrifice my honour and life for you, and that you may not doubt of my sincerity, I swear by all that is sacred in our religion to keep your secret inviolable. Be persuaded then, Prince, that you will find in me the friend whom you have lost." This declaration encouraged the Prince and comforted him under Ebn Thayer's absence. "I am glad," said he to the jeweller, "to find in you a reparation of my loss. I want words to express the obligations I am under to you. I pray God to recompense your generosity, and I accept your obliging offer with all my heart. Believe me," continued he, "Schemselnihar's confidant came to speak to me concerning you. She told me that it was you who advised Ebn Thayer to go from Bagdad. These were the last words she spoke to me as she went away, and she seemed persuaded of what she said. But they do not do you justice. I doubt not, after what you have told me, she is deceived." "Prince," replied the jeweller, "I have had the honour to give you a faithful account of my conversation with Ebn Thayer. It is true, when he told me he meant to retire to Bussorah, I did not oppose his design. But let not this prevent your putting confidence in me. I am ready to serve you with all imaginable zeal. If you do not use my service, this shall not hinder me from keeping your secret religiously, according to my oath." "I have already told you," replied the Prince, "that I did not believe what the confidant said. It is her zeal which inspired her with this groundless suspicion, and you ought to excuse it, as I do." They continued their conversation for some time, and consulted together about the most convenient means to keep up the Prince's correspondence with Schemselnihar. They agreed to begin by undeceiving the confidant, who was so unjustly prepossessed against the jeweller. The Prince engaged to remove her mistake the first time he saw her again, and to entreat her to address herself to the jeweller whenever she might bring letters or any other information from her mistress to him. In short, they determined that she ought not to come so frequently to the Prince's house, because thereby she might lead to the discovery of what it was of so great importance to conceal. At last the jeweller arose, and after having again entreated the Prince of Persia to place an unreserved confidence in him, withdrew. The jeweller, returning to his house, perceived before him a letter which somebody had dropped in the street. He took it up, and as it was not sealed, he opened it, and read as follows: Letter from Schemselnihar to the Prince of Persia. I have received from my confidant intelligence which gives me no less concern than it must give you. In Ebn Thayer we have indeed sustained a great loss, but let this not hinder you, dear Prince, from thinking of your own preservation. If our friend has abandoned us through fear, let us consider that it is a misfortune which we could not avoid. I confess Ebn Thayer has left us at a time when we most needed his assistance, but let us bear this unexpected stroke with patience, and let us not forbear to love one another constantly. Fortify your heart under this misfortune. The object of our wishes is not to be obtained without trouble. Let us not be discouraged, but hope that heaven will favour us, and that, after so many afflictions, we shall see a happy accomplishment of our desires. Adieu. While the jeweller was conversing with the Prince of Persia, the confidant had time to return to the palace and communicate to her mistress the ill news of Ebn Thayer's departure. Schemselnihar immediately wrote this letter, and sent back her confidant with it to the Prince of Persia, but she negligently dropped it on her way. The jeweller was glad to find it, for it furnished him with an opportunity of justifying himself to the confidant, and bringing her to the point he desired. When he had read it, he perceived the slave seeking for it with the greatest anxiety. He closed it again quickly, and put it into his bosom, but the slave observed him, and running to him, said, "Sir, I have dropped a letter which you had just now in your hand. I beseech you to restore it." The jeweller, pretending not to hear her, continued his way till he came to his house. He left his door open, that the confidant, who followed him, might enter after him. She followed him in, and when she came to his apartment, said, "Sir, you can make no use of that letter you have found, and you would not hesitate to return it to me if you knew from whom it came, and to whom it is directed. Besides, allow me to tell you, you cannot honestly keep it." Before the jeweller returned her any answer, he made her sit down, and then said to her, "Is not this letter from Schemselnihar, and is it not directed to the Prince of Persia?" The slave, who expected no such question, blushed. "The question embarrasses you," continued he, "but I assure you I do not put it rashly. I could have given you the letter in the street, but I wished you to follow me on purpose that I might come to some explanation with you. Is it just, tell me, to impute a misfortune to persons who have no ways contributed towards it? Yet this you have done, in telling the Prince of Persia that it was I who advised Ebn Thayer to leave Baghdad for his own safety. I do not intend to waste time in justifying myself. It is enough that the Prince of Persia is fully persuaded of my innocence. I will only tell you that, instead of contributing to Ebn Thayer's departure, I have been extremely afflicted at it, not so much from my friendship to him, as out of compassion for the condition in which he left the Prince of Persia, whose correspondence with Schemselnihar he has discovered to me. As soon as I knew certainly that Ebn Thayer was gone from Baghdad, I went and presented myself to the Prince, in whose house you found me, to inform him of this event, and to offer to undertake the service in which he had been employed. And, provided you put the same confidence in me that you did in Ebn Thayer, It will be your own fault if you do not make my assistance of use to you. Inform your mistress of what I have told you, and assure her that though I should die for engaging in so dangerous an intrigue, I should not repent of having sacrificed myself for two lovers so worthy of one another." The confidant, after having heard the jeweller with great satisfaction, begged him to pardon the ill opinion she had conceived of him, for the zeal she had for her mistress's interest. "I am beyond measure glad," she added, "that Schemselnihar and the Prince have found in you a person so fit to supply Ebn Thayer's place. I will not fail to convince my mistress of the good will you bear her." After the confidant had testified to the jeweller her joy to see him so well disposed to serve Schemselnihar and the Prince of Persia, the jeweller took the letter out of his bosom and restored it to her, saying, "Go, carry it quickly to the Prince, and return this way, that I may see his reply. Forget not to give him an account of our conversation." The confidant took the letter and carried it to the Prince, who answered it immediately. She returned to the jeweller's house to show him the answer, which was in these words: The Prince of Persia's answer to Schemselnihar. "Your precious letter has had a great effect upon me, but not so great as I could have wished. You endeavour to comfort me for the loss of Ebn Thayer. Alas! however sensible I am of this, it is but the least of my troubles. You know these troubles, and you know also that your presence alone can cure me. When will the time come that I shall enjoy it without fear of a separation? How distant does it seem to me? Or shall we flatter ourselves that we may ever see it? You command me to preserve myself. I will obey you, since I have renounced my own will to follow only yours. Adieu." After the jeweller had read this letter, he returned it to the confidant, who said, as she was going away, "I will desire my mistress to put the same confidence in you that she did in Ebn Thayer. You shall hear of me to-morrow." Accordingly next day she returned with a pleasant countenance. "Your very looks," said he to her, "inform me that you have brought Schemselnihar to the point you wished." "It is true," replied the confidant, "and you shall hear how I succeeded. I found yesterday on my return Schemselnihar expecting me with impatience. I gave her the Prince of Persia's letter, and she read it with tears in her eyes. When she had done, I saw that she had abandoned herself to her usual sorrow. 'Madam,' said I to her, 'it is doubtless Ebn Thayer's removal that troubles you, but suffer me to conjure you, in the name of God, to alarm yourself no farther on this account. We have found another Ebn Thayer, who offers to oblige you with equal zeal, and, what is yet more important, with greater courage.' Then I spoke to her of you," continued the slave, "and acquainted her with the motive which led you to the Prince of Persia's house. In short, I assured her that you would keep inviolably the secret betwixt her and the Prince of Persia, and that you were resolved to favour their amour with all your might." She seemed to be much relieved by my discourse. "Ah, what obligations," said she, "are the Prince of Persia and I under to that honest man you speak of! I must be acquainted with him and see him, that I may hear from his own mouth what you tell me, and thank him for such unheard of generosity towards persons on whose account he is no way obliged to interest himself. The sight of him will give me pleasure, and I shall omit nothing to confirm him in those good sentiments. Fail not to bring him to me to-morrow. Therefore, sir, be so good as to accompany me to the palace." The confidant's proposal perplexed the jeweller. "Your mistress," replied he, "must allow me to say that she has not duly considered what she requires of me. Ebn Thayer's access to the Caliph gave him admission everywhere, and the officers who knew him allowed him free access to Schemselnihar's palace. But as for me, how dare I enter? You see clearly that it is impossible. I entreat you to represent to Schemselnihar the reasons which prevent me from affording her that satisfaction, and acquaint her with all the ill consequences that would attend my compliance. If she considered it ever so little, she would find that it would expose me needlessly to very imminent danger." The confidante endeavoured to encourage the jeweller. "Can you believe," said she, "that Schemselnihar is so unreasonable as to expose you to the least danger by bringing you to her, from whom she expects such important services? Consider with yourself that there is not the least appearance of risk. My mistress and I are too much interested in this affair to involve you in any danger. You may depend upon me, and leave yourself to my conduit. After the thing is over, you will be the first to confess that your apprehensions were groundless." The jeweller yielded to the confidante's assurances, and rose up to follow her. But notwithstanding his boasted courage, he was seized with such terror that his whole body trembled. "In your present state," said she, "I perceive it will be better for you to remain at home, and that Schemselnihar should take other measures to see you. It is not to be doubted but that to satisfy her desire she will come hither herself. The case being so, sir, I would not have you go. I am persuaded it will not be long ere you see her here." The confidante foresaw this, for she no sooner informed Schemselnihar of the jeweller's fear, but she prepared to go to his house. He received her with all the expressions of profound respect. When she sat down, being a little fatigued, she unveiled herself, and exhibited to the jeweller such beauty as convinced him that the Prince of Persia was excusable in giving his heart to the Caliph's favourite. Then she saluted the jeweller with a graceful air, and said to him, "I could not hear with what zeal you have engaged in the Prince of Persia's concerns and mine, without immediately determining to express my gratitude in person. I thank Heaven for having so soon made up to us the loss of Ebn Thayer." Schemselnihar said many other obliging things to the jeweller, after which she returned to her palace. The jeweller went immediately to give an account of this visit to the Prince of Persia, who said to him as soon as he saw him, "I have expected you impatiently. The trusty slave has brought me a letter from her mistress, but it does not relieve me. Whatever the lovely Schemselnihar says, I dare not hope, and my patience is exhausted. I know not now what measures to pursue. Ebn Thayer's departure reduces me to despair. He was my only support. In him I have lost everything. I had flattered myself with some hopes by reason of his access to Schemselnihar." After these words, which the Prince spoke with so much eagerness that he gave the jeweller no time to interrupt him, he said to the Prince, "No man can take more interest in your affliction than I do, and if you will have patience to hear me, you will perceive that I can relieve you." Upon this the Prince became silent and listened to him. "I see," said the jeweller, "that the only way to give you satisfaction is to devise a plan that will afford you an opportunity of conversing freely with Schemselnihar. This I wish to procure you, and tomorrow will make the attempt. You must by no means expose yourself to enter Schemselnihar's palace. You know by experience the danger of that step. I know a fitter place for this interview, where you will be safe." When the jeweller had finished, the Prince embraced him with transports of joy. "You revive," said he, "by this promise, a wretched lover who was condemned to die. You have fully repaired the loss of Ebn Thayer. Whatever you do will be well performed. I leave myself entirely to your conduct." End of section 16, Part 4